and welcome to This Week in James City County. I'm your host, Renee Dahlman. Today, I am joined by two special guests. We have Sara Ruch. Sara is the emergency manager for James City County. Welcome, Sara.
Hey, Renee. Lovely to be back.
Glad to have you. I think you're here at least a couple times every year, getting us all prepared.
And it's September, so, I normally have a general stint here in September.
That's right. That's right.
For National Preparedness Month.
Yep. Okay, very good. We are also joined by Larry Snyder. Larry is the Deputy Fire Chief for the City of Williamsburg. Welcome, Larry.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's always so nice to come over in this beautiful setting over at the county complex, so thank you for having us.
Well, this is pretty exciting because we normally do not have a guest from the city as well, but so many of our messages are the same in the greater Williamsburg area, so it makes sense that we all do this together. I would like to let everybody know that this is our second time recording this. We did one version about a week ago over Zoom. It did not work out. So we are now back to more traditional podcast where we are all sitting at a huge table and we are all at least 6 feet apart. So we have social distancing under control. We have hand sanitizer. We're ready.
I will say, though, the Zoom was a lot of fun, though. There were some pretty fun occurrences that happened that, unfortunately, we're going to miss.
I was just thinking the same thing. I really wish people could see that Zoom, if for no other reason. I know you can't understand us very well because the microphone situation was very poor, and that's why we're not using it.
Right.
But it was pretty hilarious when Larry lost power. And he disappeared and then reappeared. It was good. It was a good emergency management experience on always being prepared.
Yeah,
that's right.
It was definitely a first.
And we just carried on.
We did. And then Larry joined us right back.
Larry joined us right back.
It was perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, normally, like Sara has said, this is September, which is National Emergency Preparedness Month. Mm-hmm. And normally we are so fixated, especially this time every year, especially this year, on hurricanes. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say we are getting really close to an R-named storm. And I think I heard Omar was named yesterday.
Yep. Yes.
And so what's the R name for the storm this year? Oh, that's right. It's Renee. So while I do not want anyone to be injured or I don't want any damage, I'd like all the storms to spin out into the Atlantic. If we could get to Hurricane Renee, that would be really, really awesome.
I'm pretty confident there's a strong possibility of that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Now, I will say it is supposed to be the male version of Renee because it goes female, male, I believe in
Correct.
the names.
Yep.
But I'm still taking it as Renee. We spell it differently, but that's okay. I'm still claiming it. But again, no one gets hurt. No property damage. It just spins in the Atlantic and then it goes away.
Yeah, it's the nice fish storm like the one that developed off the coast.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. That's what I want. So now that we've covered that, there are a lot of other hazards that happen in our community that we should also be prepared for, and we're going to go over those. But before we do, you both are seasoned professionals in emergencies and in disasters and hazards. What is your number one, Larry came in here with like 4 or 5. Number 1, Larry, favorite or most unique preparedness tip that you've learned?
So I did some research. I had some homework given to me about this, and I actually learned a lot. The one that I found most interesting and I would think is the most useful for our communities is using the outdoor solar lanterns that you could typically put along your sidewalks or along your driveways. During the day, obviously, that solar energy is going to give that light the power, and then you can bring that light in once the sunset and darkness falls, and you can use them as lanterns inside your house. And what a safe way, instead of using candles or other mechanical devices, to be able to illuminate your house and have a safe, effective light for your family. And obviously in the morning, you put them back out. They recharge with the solar power. You bring them back in and you use a jug or a flower pot or anything to kind of keep them upright. And they work out really well. So I thought that was a great tip to have safe lighting in your home at night.
Very good, Larry. You did your homework. You did a great job.
Thanks.
I like that idea. I had actually never heard that before, so that's a good one. All right, Sara, what is your favorite or most unique tip?
My favorite tip is for ice cube trays. You put a penny on top of one of the ice cubes in the ice cube tray. And so when you lose power, if you come back and or the power comes back on and you want to know how long it's been out for, if the penny is at the bottom of the ice cube tray, it's been too hot in your fridge for too long, and you need to throw away the food that's there. So it's a nice tip. So you might evacuate and go somewhere else. And you're like, well, did the power go off at my house? Did it not go off at my house? I don't know. Is the food still good in the fridge and freezer, or is it not? And you just have to look and see, is the penny frozen at the bottom of the ice cube tray, or is it still on the top, or somewhere in the middle? So that's my favorite tip. I thought it was unique.
That's a great tip. I like that one too.
Thanks.
All right. Good job. Y'all did great on your homework. Thank you. A++. All right. So let's get into hazards. What are some examples of other hazards besides hurricanes that we need to prepare for here in the greater Williamsburg area? Sarah, do you want to take that?
Sure. So, there's always the potential for some sort of gas leak, or, a hazardous material truck tipping over on the interstate that could cause evacuations. We have tornadoes, obviously. I really hate bringing up terrorism because we live in such a nice community, and it is very, I think it's relatively crime-free compared to other areas. But we do have some high-profile businesses or historical sites within James City County and Williamsburg. So it's always good to be prepared, and also, unfortunately, there's, prior to everybody staying in their homes for a long time and working from home, there's always the workplace disgruntled employee sort of incident as well, or mass casualty incident at, you name it, a restaurant or a school, heaven forbid, or something like that, where people just need to be prepared in general, whether it's, for hurricane season and other disasters, having a preparedness bag and a go kit, and we'll get into more of that later, I know. But also there's a new class that you can take online through FEMA to be prepared for some of these mass casualty incidents that we'll talk about in a little bit. So just making sure that we're prepared for all hazards, the same way that the county and the city prepare for all hazards through their emergency operations plan. It is important that residents also prepare for any sort of disaster that could come up.
So it sounds like you all just never get to go, phew, okay, we've made it through that. Okay, we're good to go until next May.
Right. No, I think it's true. And, Sarah had some really good points. I really wanted to emphasize the tornadoes, with Hurricane Isaias. That was something that affected our Hampton Roads communities. And they're so unexpected and create such quick devastation. That's a quick response and a long recovery type thing. Obviously, we have our Surrey nuclear power plant, which most of our communities are well in tune with, and our calendar guides and all the other information that we do for emergency preparedness. So that's another piece that's local to our community that's a little bit unique with that nuclear power plant, that we do a great job in coordinating messaging and preparedness and plans and those types of things for our communities. But in emergency management, there's never a day off, because there's something always unexpected that you try to predict what the future may bring, and sometimes you're able to predict that, and other times you're surprised. So it's certainly a lifelong lesson in planning and being prepared.
Absolutely. And a great example of that, I think, is Hurricane Laura, that we knew was coming through last weekend. And we knew that it wasn't going to be a lot of hazard from the actual hurricane by the time it got to our area, but it was going to meet up with the cold front. And like you've said, those tornadoes could happen, and you never know. And so you have to be prepared.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I didn't pick a pandemic for this year. So
No?
that was not on my top list of disasters that I would have picked for 2020.
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So what are the 3 things that everybody should do to be prepared, regardless of the hazard?
You can get a kit, stay informed, and make a plan.
Okay.
And this year, the CDC has actually come out with some special tips for us as we prepare for hurricane season. So the first is give yourself time to prepare. So I think a lot of people probably remember, early in the pandemic where it was very difficult. And it is still difficult to get some items, Clorox wipes being one of them.
Right.
But you don't want to be standing in a long line like people normally do, right before a hurricane, getting your bread and your milk and stocking up on stuff. You want to plan beforehand, have a little bit of extra food. Hopefully people are able to do that so that you're not in those long lines in the grocery store with everybody else, or at Lowe's buying your generator, or Home Depot or Ace or wherever you buy your generator at. Also, they suggest, if possible, home delivery.
Okay.
You can order a lot of stuff online now. So those are always good options. But with that being said, I also think that it's important to support your small businesses within your community. So that's something to think about while being prepared. So pack your go kits. This year, they've added having 2 masks, soap, hand sanitizer, and wipes if you can find them. And then keep your distance. So whether it's in the grocery store, over at your favorite shopping center, or your favorite local hardware store, keep your distance from everybody else while you're also preparing.
So this list for the kit, I'm sure that there is a place on the internet folks can go to get a comprehensive list of everything that you can or you should have in your kit or in your go bag. Where could people go? What would be a good website?
So ready.gov, I personally think is probably the easiest.
Okay.
It's just ready.gov.
Okay.
And they have all the different hazards on there. You can pick your hazard and they have all the things that you should do to be prepared for it. The CDC also has a special page for hurricane preparedness this year. And you can always go to our local pages too.
Absolutely. Yep. One of the other things that, we talked about the 3 things in terms of the kit, the plan, and being informed. That information is going to be really important. And of course, our audience and our communities are probably get information in many different ways. I know that James City and Williamsburg, we have our emergency messaging platforms that we use. So we encourage people to subscribe to those so that we're sending out messages. Obviously, typically, if it's affecting Williamsburg, it's going to affect James City and vice versa. So for, Williamsburg, we have Williamsburg Alerts that we encourage our community or even James City to sign up for. And that also is a platform for us to get out emergency messaging in terms of what the city's doing to prepare, any guidance or recommendations we may have. And some of those are linked to the National Weather Service. So if we do have a tornado watch, and depending upon what level of notifications you want to get, you can get some of those things.
Right.
And so obviously you have your TV and other social media platforms, but I think it's important for Sara and I to talk about our communities getting into our messaging systems and subscribing to that. And certainly if they have any questions, they can contact either one of us or our fire administrations or emergency management. We can help them through that.
Okay, what are the websites, or how do people subscribe to? I know in James City County, it's JCC Alert. JCCalert.org.
Yep.
And what about the city?
It's called Williamsburg Alerts, and if you just go to our city's homepage and you go to emergency preparedness, there's a link that takes you to that.
Okay.
And if it's not user friendly or somebody has any difficulty, certainly they can contact Fire Administration 220-6220, and we'll certainly work them through that process.
Okay, very good.
And that was a good point bringing that up, Larry, about registering for our alert notification systems. I don't know if you guys have this or not, but in James City County for jccalert.org, we've set it up so that if there is a tornado warning or a flash flood or flooding warning, everybody, no matter what time of night or day, is going to get those 2 for sure. And when Fire Chief Ash and I were walking around Governor's Land, who had a tornado hit after Isaias or during Isaias, we had several residents that came up to us and said thank you, because as soon as they were getting their alerts, they were hearing the train sort of noise from the tornado as well, and they were able to go to safe places. And I know for us, at least, we've had a lot of people register right after that for jccalert.org because they had heard from their neighbors, hey, I got this from the county and it woke me up in the middle of the night. So
I think that's a great point. It's I know that we have the option of getting those National Weather Service alerts. I don't know that we actually are able to filter down to those two specific, most high risk categories for our communities. I've had the opposite experience where they get all the national weather alerts, so they'll get a frost advisory at 1:00 in the morning, and so that kind of turns people off. I'm not really necessarily concerned about that, but I mean, what a great story for folks in the Governorland community to get that alert and help them be safe and be prepared and give them some awareness. So it's something that we need to look at in the city. I think it's a great idea.
Do I even bring up our lightning alert?
Yeah, it's a great story.
So we had a lovely incident when we first started jccalert.org where people were getting woken up in the middle of the night by lightning strikes, because I thought it was a good idea to have lightning strikes on there, just probably not at like midnight. I was thinking more about people that have kids that were out playing baseball or whatever,
out playing
soccer.
Golf.
Golf.
Right.
See, wouldn't it be handy to know that there was
Absolutely.
lightning close by?
Absolutely.
Now, you probably didn't want every single phone in your house going off at the same time to tell you there was lightning outside. But, we lived, we learned, and thankfully the lovely residents of James City County went along for the fun ride and were accommodating and understood our problem with the new system. And I've made tweaks since then. So the only two they get now in the middle of the night are tornado warnings or flood warnings. So.
Yeah, that was a long night, because there's not just one lightning strike. I mean, it just happens the entire storm. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. But we survived. We did. Okay, so we've talked about a kit, and I'm assuming plans. You can get information on how to set up your plans on ready.gov.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely.
So, and then Williamsburg Alerts with an S at the end.
Yes, ma'am. That's
okay.
correct.
And jccalert.org.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Also, James City County has, and I'm sure Williamsburg has some as well. We have these great sheets that Ready Virginia actually came out with several years ago, which walk you through exactly what you need in your plan, like workplace phone numbers for people, school phone well, I mean, I guess school's not going to be fully in session for a couple weeks, but when they do start again, school phone numbers, etc., doctors, numbers, all sorts of stuff like that, what you need in your kit, emergency contact cards, staying informed so you know different places where you can get information from. Another little tip that I like to generally bring up is while you're making your plan, make sure you have an out-of-town contact that everybody knows and that they can call. So, for example, the reason why I bring this up is the earthquake that happened out in Louisa several years back, but we did feel it in Hampton Roads. All of a sudden, everybody's on, their cell phones trying to call loved ones within the 757 area code, and you literally could not get through on phones.
Right.
I worked for a different city at the time and standing there at City Hall, and I actually had to use my fire department radio, which is rare for me, to communicate with anybody. But you could send text messages. Sometimes they'd go through, sometimes they wouldn't. But the point is, the out-of-town contact, the way the system is set up, just in general with phone systems, is you can make a call out of your area code if the area code is overwhelmed, but you might not be able to make a call in it. So if you have an aunt or grandma or someone who lives in like New York or Minnesota or Arizona or wherever, make them your out-of-town contact. Make sure that everybody in the family knows that that's the person you call if you can't get a hold of mom or dad or your husband or your wife. Everybody's going to call Aunt Susie up in New Jersey, and Aunt Susie's going to be the one to relay any important messages like I'm okay, or we're going to go to our meeting spot, or I'll meet you at home, or I'm picking up the kids, or whatever the message is, because the area codes do have a tendency of getting overwhelmed when there is some sort of large event in an area.
Absolutely. Well, I know you've already alluded to this, Sarah, but the pandemic, COVID-19, is not going away just because it's hurricane season. Mm-hmm. So how has COVID-19 affected our planning? How has it made things different or more difficult?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, it's changed how we plan for things. It's given some added conditions and variables that we have to consider. Simple things like Sarah was just talking about with Go Kits, the having 2 masks and hand sanitizer. Those are things a year ago we weren't talking about. Right. So how we interact as a community and each other is different now with the social distancing and the mask wearing. I think the biggest thing that certainly has impacted emergency management is our sheltering vision on how we're going to take care of our community in the event that we do have a widespread power outage or we have an area that is impacted by a tornado. How are we going to manage those folks who may be displaced or folks who may need to be housed somewhere? And historically, James City and Williamsburg, we've had our own shelters, whether at Quarter Path or James River Elementary, and we've also have opportunities and plans where we have joint shelters together, if that's makes the most sense for both of us. And this year, sheltering, that type of big shelter is not our first line of defense to help our community in the event that they need housing. We're looking for that non-congregate housing, which is hotels or motels or timeshares or something where we can have more isolation for the families or the individuals who may need help. And that's a different planning component. Right. Because obviously the bigger shelters, you can't have as many people. You're worried about, minimizing the COVID spread. And so I think it's taken a different turn in our planning practices. And I think that's probably been one of the largest impacts from an emergency management standpoint is really our shelter posture and planning. Certainly, I'm sure Sarah can add more to that.
Yeah, so James City County and Williamsburg are following the National Mass Care Strategy this year, and that's the way that we're going to be operating. There are multiple other opportunities that we're talking with the state and Red Cross about for possibly only doing a couple regional shelters if we did have something that came up like big where you really did have to shelter people in a congregate care setting, which is not ideal this year, whether that's opening up more shelters or more sites so that we can have the spacing, or it is doing these I don't want to call them a mega shelter, but because I don't think we have anything around here that would suffice as a mega shelter, but a much larger regional shelter in order to provide that additional spacing that's needed. So if someone were to show up to a shelter this year, or be seeking, if they were to show up to a shelter this year and we would have people outside obviously doing the normal registration, but then you would have someone also asking, your typical COVID questions. So have you been in contact with a known COVID person within the last 14 days? Have you, I'm not going to go over all of them right. because people know what they are by right. now. You fill them out on every single questionnaire when you go to the doctor's office or even for work for right. some people. So, and then also temperature checks. So, and we've worked with the state, the emergency managers in the region have worked with the state to ask for testing kits for the shelters. And it's not everybody at the shelter would be tested in order to get in. But if you were one of the people that had answered yes, like, yes, I have symptoms, or yes, I was in contact in the last 14 days, we would have a special area or room for just that family, that individual, and we'd have to isolate within the shelter. But yes, this year we're following the National Mass Care Strategy, looking at all sorts of options, whether it's congregate care or non-congregate care. And while, again, Renee, I know we're talking about hurricane season because we're in hurricane season, but We don't know how long something like this is going to last. Hopefully not much longer. But that brings us into tornado season again in the spring, winter storm season. I know when I go out and give presentations, people would always talk about the winter storm, the Christmas winter storm from several years back, the ice storm. Mm-hmm. People weren't talking about Hurricane Isabel up here. They were talking about this ice storm because that affected them and their power more than Isabel. So, or, if you were to have some sort of chemical leak where you needed to shelter in place or go to a shelter, or if, we had some sort of nuclear incident, we would have COVID stuff related to that. So things that, Larry and I wanted to talk about related to sheltering during COVID, and a lot of this has come out in the national media, especially with Laura, is not everybody needs to leave their home. We are very, I'm going to say blessed in James City County and Williamsburg. We do not have a whole lot of evacuation zones up here. And the evacuation zones are based on storm surge models. So that means that there's not a lot of flooding. So what we typically say is that you run from the water and you hide from the wind. Now, there is a caveat for that. If you live in some sort of mobile home or structure that is not sturdy, then obviously, you don't want to stay in that during high winds. And the city or the county would definitely be relaying that message that, people in these sorts of housing, you need to evacuate or make your own plans. Also, things to think about. I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't want to go to a shelter this year. I just personally, I don't like going to the grocery store anymore, which is the truth, Right. All of a sudden, my fun Friday night of wandering around, a department store is gone. Like, that's not fun for me anymore. So I'm given that background to say, the city and the county are obviously going to do what we can, but we cannot guarantee that any sort of shelter that we would open, that there wouldn't be the potential for you to get COVID, because, 40% of the people that get it are asymptomatic, and we just can't. The same way you can't guarantee it when you go to the grocery store or wherever, Make a plan now. So this is why we're talking now. Make a plan now. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to coworkers. If you feel that you're not in a safe house, or if you are in one of our evacuation zones, you don't have to go that far. You just have to be out of the evacuation zone. So check around with friends and family to see if you can stay with them if you needed to. Other opportunity would be, we do have a lot of lovely hotels and motels around here that unfortunately are not as full as they normally are. And they're definitely normally not full once we get past, Labor Day. Check and see, maybe that's the best option for you. And then the fourth and final option would honestly be to look or seek shelter from your local government. And with that, in James City County, we have actually, because we need your help, if you feel that you might be in a place where you would need to seek shelter for some sort of wind event or water event, we have a emergency shelter screening survey. It's on our DSS page on the county webpage. It's also on the emergency management webpage. We're asking for people to pre-register on there. There's some questions. You will get a call back from one of our lovely DSS staff to go over planning with you a little bit more and see exactly what your needs are. Or you can also call, if you're not a huge fan of computers or computer savvy, you can call 757-259-3100. Again, I'll say it one more time, 757-259-3100, and they will also be more than willing to help you with that. So that's part of the county's plan. You can help us plan, if we know about how many people could possibly be seeking shelters during some sort of event, that helps us with our numbers and our staffing and our plans. So
Sara gave some really great advice, and that's been part of our messaging that's been different this year for our community. We were just in a Cert Sector 1 meeting last night where we were really emphasizing that shelter in place, and that's something that I don't know that we have emphasized as much as we have this year. And it's not because we don't want to open a shelter or we don't want to provide that service or capability to our community. Truly, they're safer at home or in someone else's home or another friend's or anywhere else, as opposed to being in a large building with other folks who they may not know. So, I think it's an important thing that even once this pandemic is over, I think you're going to see some changes within emergency management of, really sheltering in place and having more of a personal plan instead of getting to that number 4 level within that mass care tiered structure in terms of, shelter options. And it certainly has been a big change for us this year in that shelter in place.
Now, Larry, do I understand correctly that the city of Williamsburg does not have any evacuation zones for storm surge?
Yeah, we do not have any. So the Know Your Zone campaign, which is sponsored and really encouraged by our Virginia Department of Emergency Management, is not applicable for citizens or anybody in the city of Williamsburg. Back in the 1600s when they went from Jamestown up to Williamsburg, they chose it because it's on the knoll of the peninsula. So it's something that we're really lucky about. But what that does for us from a planning perspective is maybe folks who are further down in Hampton Roads, maybe Williamsburg is going to be an area of refuge for those hotels and things that Sara has talked about, or even James City County for that matter. So we may have an increase in people here just trying to evacuate from whatever storm is coming.
Well, and you just said exactly what I was leading into. So if your house is good and safe, I'll get your address at the end of the podcast and
Yes,
put it
ma'am.
on the screen.
Absolutely.
That anybody from James City County can go to Larry's house.
Absolutely. My wife would love that. And we have 2 boys that you can help watch.
Very good. Very good.
Renee, can I?
Please.
Larry reminded me. So VDEM has come out with new hurricane guides for this year.
Yep,
and they're
I have it on
supposed
my
to be in the mail.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're supposed to be getting them any day now. And we will be putting them out within the community at our normal spots within, in the county. We put them at all of our county public buildings. Anywhere I can find a leaflet holder, that's where they go. And this year, they even made some changes. First change is that the coloring of the evacuation zones have changed. Now, the zones themselves have not changed.
Okay.
It's just the color of the zone that has changed. So, for example, A used to be blue. Now A is going to be red. And then it goes down from there. So red, orange, yellow, blue.
Okay.
So in James City County, we only have A, B, and C zones. We do not have a D zone, so you will not be seeing that blue anymore on the James City County evacuation zone area. And they also have added, the cute little COVID symbol to new suggestions for this year, i.e. the mask, the hand sanitizer,
right.
Those sorts of things to add to your Go Kit, and for planning purposes, what we talked about earlier, which is staying with friends or that sort of thing. So,
I think that was going to be important. I was going to say the same thing. We just got the electronic version of the Hurricane Preparedness Guide with that COVID lens, if you will, a couple of weeks ago. And I was also going to put it in the same plug for county or city residents that, for the city, you can come into the fire station, you go to the municipal building, we can get those to you. Or if you just need to call the fire station, we need to bring them to your house. We'll certainly do that if that's for some of our elderly population or more vulnerable population that just doesn't feel comfortable leaving. It certainly is a great resource when we talk about those other areas of the kits and the plan and being informed.
Right. And it is very comprehensive. It's not just about evacuation zones.
Right.
It is about everything you would ever want to know, I think, in terms of hurricanes. And like what we've been talking about today, your preparation for a hurricane can be your preparation as well for all of the other hazards.
Absolutely.
Did y'all see how I did that? I brought it back to the, I'm pretty proud of that.
You're
Very
extremely
impressive.
talented. You should look at this as a career.
I should, right? Thanks, Larry. All right. So back to serious. I understand that there's a program called Heads Up, but I don't really know much about it. Can you all talk about that?
That's a Larry can
That's
start
a
that.
Larry.
Yep. So the city has what we call a special needs registry.
Okay.
You can go to the city's website and you can go into the search bar and put in special needs registry. If you also go to the police page, you can find it is also labeled as Heads Up. And what that is a program that individuals can sign up for, and it's a sheet. It's an information sheet that talks about some of the things that you may need, whether it's oxygen, whether it's medications, whether you have a disability, whether you have access issues, or any of those types of things that may be unique to you that's important for us to know from an emergency management standpoint. And really our human services, our police and fire are part of that program. Human Services really manages it for the city of Williamsburg. So if you can't find it on our website and you have questions about the Special Needs Registry, you certainly can contact our Human Services at 220-6161. And anybody who answers the phone can certainly help you with that. The important part about the Special Needs Registry for us, from an emergency management, fire, and police standpoint, it's another planning tool. So when Hurricane Isaias was going through and we had a couple of power outages, we're able to pull our registry list and figure out, okay, who in these neighborhoods who may not have power should we go check on, or we know has specific needs that we need to help them with. And we were ready for that. And sometimes whether you have to evacuate them, it starts helping you determine what size bus would I need to do if I can't get anybody in there. So for us, it's a really good planning and situational awareness tool, and really encourage our citizens who have needs, who may have some vulnerabilities that others don't, to register for that. And again, if you have questions, please contact our Human Services. Is that 220-6161.
Okay, very good. How about you, Sarah?
So we have actually ours are. We have two. So there is the Heads Up program, which is run under 911, and you can go to that webpage and fill out an electronic form, and it provides them with lots of different information. It could be there's some sort of special access to your house or something. I mean, so it's just a heads up for the fire and police who could be responding to your house that there's someone with this sort of medical need or that, or it's a heads up. There is a separate program through DSS for Special Needs Registry, and they can go to the DSS website or call the phone number that I mentioned earlier.
And so when we've been saying DSS, that's Department of Social Services?
Sorry, I talk in acronyms all day long.
So how can people be more involved in disaster or hazard planning in the county and the city?
James City County and Williamsburg have a grant for Cert, which is Community Emergency Response Team, and CART, which is our Community Animal Response Team, that we jointly do classes and those sorts of things. We'll be putting out information about when the next classes will be for those. Obviously, due to COVID and size restrictions, might offer more, or we might. I'm trying to work on doing a remote class where where our teacher stands in front and we have a camera set up in the back and some sort of system, whether it's WebEx or Zoom or something, and people can attend class that way and ask questions because there'll be someone monitoring it in the back. We're going to try. So those, I don't have any exact dates for you right now, but that's where we're at with that. CART, same thing. CART is our Community Animal Response Team, and that is for when we open up shelters. So we need to be able to provide a safe place for people's pets too, because one of the things that we saw in Katrina, unfortunately, was a lot of people passed away because they did not want to leave their pets, and I wouldn't want to leave my dog either. So so we have a team that's set up just to do that. And then obviously volunteering with the health department and MRC, they're always looking for volunteers right now, and that's based out of Newport News, but they do have people up here that help us. So
yeah, I would say the same thing with our Cert programs. Again, as Sarah said, they're joint. I reflect on the last time we did our podcast, maybe some missed opportunities to talk about how other volunteerism opportunities. We have a lot of nonprofit groups in our community that do amazing work with all different types of folks in our community. I would encourage you to look at some of the nonprofit groups that may be able to maybe serves as a niche, whether it's Meals on Wheels or faith in action or any of those types of things. For the city, obviously, we have a volunteer component to our fire department. Another great opportunity for folks, if they're interested in this as a career, to come and help and get some of that training. But again, I think the Cert program, volunteering with fire and EMS, so that's something that you're interested in. And then trying to figure out a support role with our nonprofit groups throughout this community that just do a really tremendous work, whether it's the food bank or other things. Those are other opportunities that impact emergency management that our folks can get involved with, if that's kind of a role that they think is a good fit for them.
All right.
And now might be the right time, Renee, since we're talking about volunteering and training and things, is to bring up FEMA's new web-based training program, which is called You Are the Help Till Help Arrives. And it's an online course that people can take. You do get a certificate at the end. And it teaches you what to do during a mass casualty incident. So call 911, stay safe, stop the bleed, position any injuries, provide comfort. I really wish we weren't in a point where we need to create a special course for people to be prepared in case it takes a little bit for police or fire to arrive on scene to provide, that basic instant help. That's why it's called the You Are the Help Until Help Arrives. So it's a new FEMA-based training. It's more targeted for your mass casualty sort of incidents, but at the same point, you can have injuries during a hurricane or a tornado. So I think some of the wound stuff that they go over and things would be helpful, really honestly, during any disaster.
And I would just piggyback with that. I would say that obviously it's a great opportunity for training that's applicable whenever, but what a great time frame for this training to roll out when everyone's at home and may be looking for something to do. A lot of our virtual learning, maybe that's a great way to fill in some time to prepare you and your family or your community. So I think it fits really nicely with this current environment that we're in.
Absolutely.
And while we're looking to fill time with your family, there were several things that I forgot to say under our planning segment.
Okay.
So I would like to go over a couple of them right now. One is this emergency financial first aid kit that FEMA came out with. It is fabulous. It gives you a whole bunch of things. So we always tell you, okay, make sure you have all your important documents in a Ziploc bag or in a waterproof container, or you have them on a thumb drive or maybe both, so that you can take them with you when you have to leave, and then you have all of your important information. Well, what's your important information? How do I know really what's important? Some stuff's kind of obvious, like homeowner's insurance. That's, a good one. And your driver's license, your deed to your house, if you have that, all sorts of things. In here, this book is 36 pages long, and it goes over everything that you could possibly need to include, your credit card information, insurance policy, financial obligations, tax statement. Do you have any estate planning stuff that you need to bring with you? Sources of income, financial accounts and other assets. Even if, you're not doing this to prepare for a disaster, quite honestly, I think this book is good for just anybody to get a little bit more organized. Passports, any military discharge records, marriage license, divorce decrees, birth certificates, all sorts of things. So it literally walks you through and has lines for you to fill in and points of contact and all sorts of good things in there.
Where do people get that book?
We have some at James City County in the emergency management office. So if they just want to contact Caroline, they can call 757-565-7617, and they can get this book.
Great.
Speaking of insurance policies, I'm hoping people check their insurance policies in the spring like we kind of remind people to, but there's a lot of stuff that happened in the spring this year, so I know I didn't get around to everything that I normally do before hurricane season officially hits. But now's a good time to go back and look at your insurance policy, make sure nothing has changed in your home or your rental where you need to cover more. It's also important to look at any special deductibles that you have. I know a lot of the insurance companies have now added like a high wind deductible. So a couple of years ago with one of the storms, that surprised a lot of people because they were thinking they would pay their normal homeowner's insurance deductible of, I don't know, $500 or something. But it was actually a deductible of like $2,000, you know, so they totally weren't prepared for that. Changes like that sometimes get made without you realizing it. So it's important to go back and check your insurance policies and make sure that you fully understand what's covered, what's not, and if there's any special deductibles or anything for any sort of hazardous weather. And that goes back to the flooding. Flooding isn't covered under, your normal homeowner's insurance. That's something that you have to purchase separately. You can buy it through your normal agent, but flood insurance, if you happen to be in one of those areas that floods, or, anywhere it rains, it can flood. I feel like I'm talking a lot, Larry, and I'm just leaving you out. I got a whole list here.
No, I think you're doing great.
Okay. Well, I mean, if there's anything that you want to interject, please just do. So, under the kit portion, we talked about get a kit, have a plan, stay informed. I forgot to mention the new norm is 1 week of food, and water. We talked a lot previously about, making sure that you went and got stuff early so you could do the social distancing thing and not be in the grocery store with everybody else getting their stuff. But make sure that you have that 1 week of food and water. It's important to have any adaptive equipment that you might need. So by adaptive equipment, it could be glasses, it could be your walker, it could be a wheelchair, it could be a whole bunch of different things. So if you're like me and you wear contacts, you want to make sure that you have extra contacts, or definitely know that where your glasses are, and make sure that they're still the right prescription or whatever. Any sort of special diet stuff that you might need to have around. Another tip, I know you said we could only have one, but this is my other second favorite tip that I always mention.
Fair.
I know, she just slid that right in there, didn't she?
Yeah. I had to, though. It's a really good tip. So if the power goes out and you do need to buy stuff a couple days later, it's a good idea to have some cash on hand.
Right.
So I know right now a lot of stores, and I don't know how this is going to work, but a lot of stores are like pay with credit card, pay with credit card, pay with credit card. We don't really want to handle cash. Mm-hmm. But if the power goes out, there is cash is like it, because places really don't take checks anymore. And if the power's out for the store not to be able to take your credit card, 10 to 1, the ATM that you go to is not going to have power either. So if you think that you're going to go get your cash later after the storm or whatever, you might not be able to because there might not be power at your ATM.
And so if you are hoarding your coins at home, because apparently that's a thing.
That's true.
It would be a good time to break open that piggy bank and get out those pennies.
The only thing I would add to Sarah's very comprehensive list, great information, we talked about last time was medication. And if your medication needs to be stored, and especially if it needs to be stored in a refrigerator, having a means to be able to do that, whether that's some type of cooler or some type of something that you can keep cool for that week long that Sarah's talking about, so that you can ensure that you have the medication that you need to stay healthy and well.
Okay.
And then also, we don't want to forget our pets. So make sure that you have a little bit extra for your pet food, bowl, crate, medicines, etc. for your vaccination records for your pets in case you have to evacuate. Well, in case you evacuate, and then obviously you're going to take them with you. So you need to have that sort of stuff with them as well. And for the food safety and stuff, I didn't mention this earlier, but you can go to foodsafety.gov and CDC Food Safety, and they have great sheets on how to make your water safe. So if we had an issue, and it wouldn't have to be a hurricane, it could be, here we go, I'm going down a rabbit hole again, but it could be someone hit a water main or something. So how do you make your water safe? What's the right amount of bleach? You obviously don't want to put too much in there. How long do you boil water for before it becomes clean? So they have great stuff in there. They also have eat safe food. So when to throw perishables out from your refrigerator, what things keep longer, and clean and sanitize things that touch food in a 4-step process. So there's lots of good information out there to keep people safe for any disaster related to food safety as well, which I don't think we really talk about that much. Another thing, and Larry's probably going to be the expert on this, it's really not going to be me, but talking about running generators. So I have to bring this up mainly because of what we were seeing after Laura. So unfortunately, as of the last time I checked, so the numbers might have changed, the last time I checked, there had been 14 deaths due to Laura down in the Louisiana area. However, the really sad part is that 8 of those deaths were due to carbon monoxide poisoning and people not using their generators properly. So, Larry, you got some tips from the fire department?
Yeah, I would say, one, if you're going to use a generator, make sure you have a carbon monoxide alarm. Make sure it's battery powered, it's not relied upon electrical power. And have those certainly in the different areas of your home, depending upon if it's a 2-story home, certainly have one on the 2nd floor, one on the 1st floor. A lot of folks, the generators are very sensitive when it's still raining, so people try to get them in an enclosed space. So maybe they'll use a garage or a crawl space if it's big enough for their home. And, we've even seen locally, and certainly as you reported with Laura, that off-gassing from those generators is going to create that CO, and it needs to be away from the house. Now, I don't remember the specific distance, but I think it's at least 5 or 10 feet away from the house, if I remember correctly. But it needs to be outside, and you need to make sure it has, wherever the exhaust is pushing out, it has good ventilation to get out into the air away from your home. It's not going to get into your crawl space or other places like that. So certainly a great resource to have to help protect your family, but it can be a very dangerous resource as well. So you want to make sure that, again, it's appropriately distanced from your house, even fueling them. If you're out of power for a long period of time, a lot of people, what we call, they'll hot fuel it, which is while the generator is still running, they'll still put the gasoline in, and obviously the generator is hot, and if any of the gasoline gets in any of the hot parts of the generator, it could create a flash or a fire. So making sure that you turn it off and actually let it cool for a little bit and then turn and go ahead and fill up the generator. Those are just some of the practices. And certainly ready.gov or a lot of different websites talk about generator safety and emergency preparedness messaging, which is a critical piece for that type of resource.
Absolutely. And Larry, I don't know if you have a whole house generator, but you may want to get one, just, referring back, because the county's coming.
This is true.
To your
this
house,
is true.
So.
I'll make sure we put that in.
That would be great.
Thanks.
Great.
I did have one hack for dogs or for pets as I was doing my research, and Sarah's probably heard of this. And so obviously, if we're in a wind event or a rain event, and it's 12 hours, your pet may have to go outside to use the restroom, and you may not feel safe to do that. And so one of the hurricane emergency preparedness hacks that they show online is getting a little baby pool and keeping it in your house and doing some type of like turf, so you can go out before the storm and use a little shovel to get enough of your grass and maybe a little bit of soil, and you layer that, and it's almost like it's its own sod thing. And so if you have a dog or a cat that needs, obviously cats probably have their own litter box, but dogs specifically, use a baby pool with some turf. You put it somewhere in your house where you feel comfortable for it to be, and it would be a way to make sure that your pets are able to use the restroom if it's inclement weather outside. I thought that was a pretty neat idea.
Very good. Okay, now y'all are even, because that was your second tip.
That's
so
right.
you are even. And again, you may want to get a lot of baby pools.
That's right. Maybe I will.
People are going to bring their dogs. So, all right.
So, and then Renee, I'm sorry. I think I'm done with something. And then I find in my notes, I'm like, oops, I didn't talk about that either. And I really wanted to. So going back to volunteering and classes and stuff for people to do while they're with their family or social distancing or being at home, etc., not going out as much. The Sky Storm Spotter program offered by the National Weather Service is a fabulous program to take online. And they can visit weather.gov/Skywarn and become a Skywarn spotter. Even if you just want to learn more about weather and you don't feel comfortable doing the whole spotter thing, it's a great class just to know more about, hey, what's that cloud mean? And, weather patterns and how storms are formed and lightning and all sorts of stuff. So I highly suggest if people have a little bit of extra time to also go and do that class. And I think, Renee, I think I'm basically done with my list, which was honestly probably a more comprehensive list than we normally do. But Larry and I also, I know James City County does for sure, and I'm sure Williamsburg, we normally are out and about pounding the pavement in September doing national preparedness events, whether it was, we were scheduled to do movie night. Mm-hmm. And there is no such thing as movie night anymore in James City County. I know Larry and them do lots of, festivals and stuff, and they have their booths out and things, and go talk to civic groups and homeowners associations who are having meetings, and everybody's doing Zoom now. I mean, I'm not opposed to joining your homeowners meeting for a Zoom call if people really want me to, but it's just not the same as going to a building. And, also doing programs like a preparedness day like we were going to do this year, which was going to be very comprehensive. And but I think we covered, that's why I had my list, I think we covered all of the highlights that people would have gotten, especially from Preparedness Day, in what Larry and I have talked about and the podcast. So I'm hoping people stuck with us. I know it's a much longer podcast than normal.
That's all right. It's all good information. Well, I think that there has been one thing that you had planned to do for Preparedness Month that has not been derailed.
Right.
And you want to talk about that?
Sure. I sure do. So for those listeners that have stuck with us for this long, Preparedness Day was going to be a day where we covered basically all the same information we did here, just maybe a little bit more extensively, and did some handouts and worked with you on making your plan or worked with you on starting your kit. And so as part of that, we had gotten a grant to give out kits for preparedness. And we are going to, for those lucky listeners that have stuck with us this far, and it's the first 50 people from Williamsburg and the first 50 people from James City County that can answer the following questions, and I'll get to the questions in a minute, they will get a preparedness backpack. And not only will they get the backpack as a starter kit, there's, flashlights, and I can't remember everything that we got in there because each kit, you can pick multiple different kits with multiple different things in them, and I can't remember which one we picked. But there will be a starter kit to get you going on your preparedness kit. You will get all of these wonderful guides that I have talked about today. So the emergency financial first aid kit, the food safety and boil water stuff, the how to, start your plan, get informed. For those that have children in the house, FEMA has actually come up with a game called Ready to Help, and it's a card game. The game teaches you to stay safe, stay calm, get help, give info, give care. And that's one thing that I guess we didn't hit on making sure that you had in the kit was something to keep the kids entertained, because if the power goes out and you don't have enough battery power in whatever game device they're using, you might have to go back to the old solitaire, which is what I did when we lost power, was actual cards, playing deck of cards and solitaire. So we can help you maybe possibly entertain the kids for a little bit with this Ready to Help. So that will be in there too for those that tell us that they have children in the home. So you can send your questions or your answers to emergency.management@jamescitycountyva.gov. I know that is one long email. emergency.management@jamescitycountyva.gov. or you can call 757-565-7617. And I've said that a couple times, and I think Renee's going to put it up on a little screen here for us. And the questions are, name 2 new items that you need to add to your emergency preparedness kit this year. So Larry and I have covered that. How many days of food and water should you have on hand? Now this one, I missed it in my sheet. So I'm just going to give it to everybody. So how long can you leave food in the freezer after the power goes out? And the answer is...
To the penny goes to the bottom of the cup.
Yeah, that's the non-scientific answer.
Good callback, though. Very good.
According to the CDC or foodsafety.gov, it's supposed to be 48 hours in a full freezer and 24 hours in a half-full freezer. So there's that one. What is FEMA's new web-based training for response to mass casualty events? And the 5th one is, where can you go to get more information on preparedness? I'm just excited we got to sit here and talk with you, and I hope that the listeners got something out of this, and hopefully James City County and Williamsburg residents are more prepared than they were previously, and hopefully a couple of our little tips and tricks is useful for people.
Okay. What about city folks? How do they send in their questions?
Oh, yes.
Or
so it's for both of us. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, it's for both of us. So James City County is just going to handle it because we currently are the storage site for the backpacks.
Okay.
So it's just easier for us to do it.
There was no room at Larry's house?
No, Larry has a small little building, so...
That's right. Yeah. So, but certainly if any of our city residents, they certainly can call that number or the email that Sara provided. And if we have, hopefully, 50 city residents, we'll go and get them and bring them to the fire station or the municipal building if we need to, or whatever logistics process we need to establish to make sure people get their kits.
Very good.
Yep. And so with that, I didn't thank you, Renee, for the logistics portion of that. I was trying to wrap up and I got ahead of myself again.
That's all right.
Call the number or email us. And as part of that, you let us know if you want your kit delivered but socially distant. So we'll drop it off at your house or your workplace, but like socially distant. Or you can always come to Fire Administration in James City County or over to Williamsburg's Fire Administration and pick them up there. So that's one of those logistical questions that you will be asked, along with if there's any children in the home and if you would like that game as well.
So 5 questions. Sara has given us the answer to one of the 5. So really 4 questions, and send those responses in and we'll get you your backpack.
Yes, ma'am.
That sounds great. That's a lot of fun. All right. Well, I do believe that we have covered everything. I mean, I guess there could be locusts and things like that we have. Murder hornets. We didn't cover those, but I think we've covered everything. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Not me. I just want to say thank you for having me. You know, again, it's always a joy to come over here and spend time with you two ladies. I think I learned just as much as hopefully our listeners have as well. So thank you for the opportunity and being here. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Anything else from you, Sara?
No, I thought I was done with my list.
Oh,
and
my
this time I still found something. So no, I this time, Renee, for sure, I'm done. So until next time.
Until next time. Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for coming in and participating in the Socially Distanced podcast. I really appreciate it, especially since you all had to do this not once, but twice. But I think this time was even better. So I'm pretty impressed with us. We're awesome. So thanks again so much for coming in. Well, that wraps up this episode of This Week in James City County. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please take a moment to go online, go to our website. We're at jamescitycountyva.gov/podcast. And while there, you're going to be able to find all of our podcast episodes, as well as a form that you can complete, give us show ideas, comments, critiques. We would really love to hear from you. So once again, thank you so much. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, and send in those answers so you can get your backpacks. And we will talk to you next week.